I'm very pleased now to welcome Perry Timms to the virtual stage. Perry is the founder. Hi, Perry. Nice to see
You're
you.
right. You too.
Perry's the founder and Chief Energy Officer of PTHR, a growing consultancy with the mission to create better business for a better world. That's something we can absolutely get on board with. PTHR is in its 10th year of operating. It's a B Corp certified organisation, a gold standard 4-day working week, an accredited living wage employer, and a climate positive organisation. Fantastic. Perry's an international and 2 times TEDx speaker and award-winning writer on the future of work, HR, and learning. And he's going to talk to us today about how we can start to show, measure, report, and prove how valuable people are in the world of work and become more soulful in our economics. So over to you, Perry.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And what a beautiful kind of handover from the things you were talking about. I've even got a Stephen Covey quote myself. So yeah, I'm actually talking to you in the control room of a podcast studio because that's what I've just been doing. So hopefully I'm soundproof, but I daren't touch any of the buttons right near me because who knows what that might do. But yes, I'm fascinated by how we value things, people, objects, and companies and organizations. And how we often value companies and organizations is something called market capitalization or market cap, and how much profit they make. It's all very money oriented. And we also see us being critical of like the amount of money that government departments spend. They've bust their budget. We can't give them any more money. I mean, it's like, when did it all become just about money? Probably a long time ago. Why are we still obsessed only about money? Well, let's have a look at how we can probably broaden the nature of what we look at in terms of what's valuable. So thanks for the introduction. I've been to the Inspirathon a couple of years ago. I love it. Hats off to everybody who's putting in a 24-hour shift to either set this up or take stuff in. You're like Olympic conference athletes. I've got a Covey quote as well. So I'm going to sort of double up the coviness. He said this quite some time ago. People are your most valuable asset. Don't like the word asset, but I knew what he meant. Only people can be made to appreciate in value. I mean, some might argue that real estate appreciates because, you know, it kind of goes up and so on. But that's only in monetary value. People appreciate in all sorts of ways: more commitment, more clever, more creative, more together, more inventive, more adaptable, whatever it might be, right? We in the workplace take people at a point in their lives, and part of the trade, I think, is where can you take us? What can you do with us? But instead, we try and squeeze them into a job description and say, we're going to contract you to do this. And we think that's great. It's not. Listen to what Covey said. We are an appreciating asset if we're an asset at all. Okay, what is value? We've got loads of metrics and data pools. We've got lots of things that we can probably coalesce into the concept that's a little bit human capital. What that means, though, that phrase, is actually how do we do things through people's brilliance and skill and ingenuity and collective endeavors. We call that human capital. It's like, you know, the bank of goodwill, the endeavors and the toil and the muscle on a building site, whatever it might be. So sometimes that's in what we make. Sometimes it's in new orders and customer sales and customer satisfaction. We've got a number of ways we can measure that. But human capital is something we kind of spend and invest in to realize what we've got. But it's really difficult to measure properly and you know, with any consistency and fairness, because how do you measure culture? I mean, like, you know, what does culture get you when it comes to performance? I think we all would say that if you've got a crappy culture, you can still be a kind of high profit organization, but you also spend a lot of money in the wrong ways because you've got a rotating door of people who leave you because you're horrible to them and your reputation is not great. But I think we're seeing a different pressure. I think consumers are saying, but you're a nasty company. You don't look after your people. I'm not going to buy your goods. And you might feel the pinch in profit as a result of being awful to your employees. So culture, equity and inclusion, psychological safety, these are really, really important things to us in the workplace. We value them, but is there a causal trail that says it's impairing your profitability? Not yet, but we should look to try and create that, I think. Now, I talk in quite grandiose terms sometimes about this because I think we need a manifesto across the world of business that says We stand to look after our people who create our value, and we want to have an economic proposition that shows how we do that, how we look after people, and how we can track the impact and value of what they do for us. I think we should start that kind of process, and often you start that with a manifesto. Because I think we don't ask the question enough about how does our enterprise create, analyze, and report value. We have scorecards, we have profit and loss schedules, we have budgets, we have all sorts of things, but they don't tell you the kind of soul of a company and how people feel about it and how loyal they are, until you get organizations like Patagonia, who recently said, their founder, Yvon Chouinard, said, we're not going to hand over this company to a private equity group or something. We're going to give it to the world and almost make it like a big cooperative, because they've got super value that goes beyond their products and their sort of sustainability agenda. They're a flag waver for how you can be an absolutely wonderful corporate citizen and also a viable business. But let's stop this zero sum stuff. Like, people, wage bills. I mean, we talk about it like, we could do without it and dispense it. It's just a cost. It's like you're nothing without your people. So therefore, why would you rate them as a cost? Like, yes, you have to pay them, but like without them, you can't deliver what you've got. So anyway, what do we mean by value generally? It's the total contribution an enterprise makes within the organization and outside it. It's not just the sales that you have. It's how you treat people, how you set out to look after the world and communities and do good. And that's manifesting itself more regularly now in purpose, mission, and operation. So I think we're starting to see a narrative change for sure. Whether that means there's the behaviors and the actual application of that follows, it should come. But in 2019, I'll tell you about this in a minute, there was a pretty big kind of seismic shift. So I think read the room. We are starting to get into this now, because people make a total contribution too. If they really believe in your purpose and mission, they will help you get your operations right so that you're efficient and smart and diligent, compliant and creative, and all those tensions that you find difficult. Instead, we try and manage people by a set of rules until within an inch of their life. I think we want liberated souls who get it, who are like a mini entrepreneur, or look at their own part of what they do as, I'm adding value and I know what it is and I enjoy doing it and I want to keep doing it well, and I'll become this appreciating factor within success. But we just go for the easy to measure tangible stuff. Not good enough anymore. And so, I'm not having it. And I'm not the only person not having it, because Rutger Bregman, who is a historian by trade, but also has a very, very active interest in the economy, kind of gave me something when he said, we're probably in an economic turning. So, I mean, let's just look at the UK at the moment. The government declares a return to what they call trickle-down neoliberal economics. And the market went, no, that's had its day. That's gone. So let's make sure that we are focusing on what the new kind of economic paradigms need to be. Now, the good news is what Bregman's research found is that the original construct of the economic system that kind of started to come in around about the 1980s and prevailed till now, we might call it Reaganomics and Thatcherism, was coined by these two people on screen, Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman. They assembled a series of economic theories from stuff that other people had said could be a useful way to run world, country, sector economics. So Bregman's theory is, well, what we need is lying around. And I think it is, because here's something lying around. Alex Edmonds, London Business School professor, did a long tail research piece. He mapped stock market value and companies who reported very highly as what would be, in this case, inspiring workplaces, but very happy, high level of engagement, that kind of thing. And he found a kind of causal, but maybe correlated connection, that those companies who their employees would say, I love working here, I'm very happy working here, it's a great place, and also perform very well, consistently outperformed, sustainably outperformed, were better for the environment, and actually were wasting less money on things like recruitment costs and so on. So, just some down budget impacts, to the point that it, 32 times more taking risks and opportunities, 11 times more innovative, and 6 times higher levels of performance. Go figure that, right? Look after people, sustainable success. It's like a revelation, except it's not, because we've been thinking this for some time. And Alex Edmonds' research and his current book, Grow the Pie, which is not what Liz Truss said, totally different one, absolutely proves that. You look after society and the people as a consequence and a key thing of what you do, and the rest follows. So time to shift that one for sure. Now, this is that 2019 revelation combined with a report from the sort of consultancy firm Corn Free. So the 2019 revelation is something called the Business Roundtable in the United States. It's 100 of the biggest companies in that part of the world, but also globally, so like Apple, Disney, Nike, etc. They all committed as a collective of companies to move from shareholder value to stakeholder value, which included the planet as a stakeholder, communities as a stakeholder, employees as a stakeholder, not just investors. What good's that, you might say? Well, it's a big declaration for a start, but this report talks to what's happened since. Stronger investment in non-profits and partnerships and community activities to the tune of billions of US dollars. Much more working with small and medium enterprises from these large organizations, because they're committed to creating an ecosystem that's good for all, not just that they'll, kind of work things out themselves or go to the usual suspects. So these are commitments that actually are starting to impact tangibly on the business world, in the US particularly. And Korn Ferry's research just kind of backs this up. It says, look, we're seeing a trend in recruitment, we're seeing a trend in retention, we're seeing a trend in performance, that companies who've got a strong purpose, who are ethically sound, who are sustainably aware and active, and who look after their people and can report engaged individuals, are performing brilliantly well. Come on, people, this is the paradigm we need to be moving into. So if organizations like this are putting their stock, if you want to call it that, in this model, I think we should too. But how do we do it? So here's how we do it, partly anyway. So this is Oxford Said Business School professor Colin Mayer, who wrote a brilliant book called Prosperity. Now, just using the term prosperity, I think changes the paradigm. Because if we're talking about profit, it's all about the cash. But if we're talking about prosperity, that's a prosperous company, prosperous shareholders, prosperous stakeholders, prosperous communities, and a prosperous planet. It's a word that has a much broader interpretation and therefore has broader measures. We're talking about human value, social value, natural value, planet, intellectual value, mind, material value, stuff, and financial value, of course. And so this has been introduced already into the work I do and into some of the organizations who've worked with me, because it's a much richer, broader, and more sensible way to think about what success looks like and how we value humans, the social element to us, etc., etc. So that's a kind of starting point, right? A bit of a framework, because we've got to go up against this. So this is Gary Hamel from London Business School, and his research tells us we're literally wasting about $18 trillion per year in the business world across the world by stuff we've invented that doesn't add value. Bureaucracy, decision making, lots of meetings, all this kind of stuff. So if we invented it, we could uninvent it because it's not value added. And I think in order to do this, we've got to be absolutely brutal on non-essential bureaucracy. So, if finance say you've got to fill in that form, it's like, why? You've got that information. And, I'm talking about a little bit of corporate rebellion here, but we just invent stuff. We don't need to do that. So let's purge some of our bureaucracy because it's getting in the way of human value. And I love this reframe of Gary's. So he said in the past, and he's right, an institution kind of owns an individual to generate income. And that's when human resources really has its kind of negative impact. But human beings are resourceful. And what we're seeing is that the individual through an institution is having the impact on the world that they want, whether it's in non-profit, whether it's in profit. If they're making a difference, they're designing better products, they're helping repair the planet, they're looking at ethical money management, whatever it might be, individual through an institution has impact. Changes the whole game in my respect, I think. And we're seeing this with quiet quitting and great resignation. If they're real or not, people are kind of going, I don't believe in this enough. And that's the kind of paradigm I think we've got to start to think about. How do we do it? Part two. If we're in HR, we already know some of this. OD, so organization design, organization development, organization effectiveness. That little trilogy has everything we need. Recalibrate the machinery, align things differently, build more responsive systems, liberate people away from restrictive job descriptions, set up better project teams, measure things more effectively in a prosperous sense. That's already there. And so is strategic workforce planning. How do we align the skills of the people we've got? What gaps do we have that we can use our people to close themselves? So we just got to make better use of these tools. So if the business leaders are saying, well, how do we do this? It's like, let us loose with these and work with us on this, because we can do this. Now, here's a bit where it gets a bit like, woof, because I wanted to show how ridiculous it is that we only value money and perhaps materials and like buildings and assets of that nature. I think there are three types of business venture. Some are combined. Care, we look after people and stuff, things like animals and plants and agriculture and whatever. Products, we make stuff. So that's like, phones and headphones and whatever. And services, legal, insurance, advice, whatever it might be. Care, products and services. And some people do them all, like Bupa, have hospitals to care, have products that you can buy, like advice on, sustainable lifestyles and well-being, and services. You ring them up and say, can I book an appointment? Now, here's the bit where it gets a bit, whoa, a lot of words on this one. Ready? Don't worry about reading it. There's a headline here. I mapped them across 5 different verticals. How do we know that a product or service or care is needed? How do we design what we found is needed? How do we get it ready to deliver? How do we deliver it? And how do we know it worked once it's delivered? That's kind of it, really. That's the MBA in like a minute. And I mapped all the human touch points. So you don't need to read them all, just take my word for it. There's 109 touch points in total across these 3 business kind of horizontals and the 5 verticals, of which 93 of them have a human touch. So the money bit, the asset bit, the material bit, it doesn't even come to 20%. Over 80% of value in organizations created by people, but we don't measure it well enough. We've got to change that. So there's an example of a human economic manifesto. I'm not going to read it out. I'm hoping the slides will be made available by the Inspiring Workplaces team. And if not, you can find me on LinkedIn and I'll send you them. But I think we need a declaration of what we intend to do. We want to be sustainable and ethic. We want to be humanist and pro-planet. We also want to create brilliant services for customers while we're doing what we're doing with those brilliant people and our ethics, and be responsible in financial and capital management. But it all starts with looking after people and unleashing HR from a bureaucratic administrative function to a caregiving, enabling, learning, and effectiveness measuring function. That's the kind of thing I'd want to step into the working world in if I was currently studying and not knowing what to do. And I think we've got an opportunity to create that departure from financial obsession to prosperous ways of doing everything we do. How long does it take? It could take a year. It depends on the size, but I just thought I'd map out, declare it, review what you've got, measure what you've got, start thinking about what you don't measure, start thinking about how we can shift to a more holistic set of measures, and then see what comes out the other end, and just report on it and share on it, and be absolutely crucially focused on valuing people, because without them, you're nothing. And Inspiring Workplaces exists to promote that, doesn't it? Like, do you want to work in a mediocre workplace or an inspiring one? Because an inspiring one will look after you. Mediocre one, might not care. And that's me. I think I'm on time. You want to know more about where we are, you'll find us online, and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not difficult to find. Thank you for that.
Excellent. Thank you, Perry. That was fantastic. I love that we both went down the Stephen Covey route. That's really funny. Must be a sign.
Exactly.
I love what you said about prosperity. We're actually in the process of becoming B Corp certified ourselves too, and I can really see how it totally shifts the way that you work. So really nice to see that.
Yeah, and I think we're celebrating a very, very growing demand for B Corp, which to me is very encouraging, because it says it's not just, recycling schemes. It's like, do you look after people and planet? And I love it. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Well, sign me up for the manifesto too.
Alrighty.
Thank you, Perry.